And now we're going to talk about wireless and how wireless connectivity relates to cybersecurity. So one of the things that attackers often do is they check for the open wireless connections around them. And sometimes there's actually one attacker or groups of attackers who will get into a car and they will go around and look for places where they might not have any physical access. They might not be able to get into a building, or they might not be able to get into a particular section of a building, like suppose a company office, but they can get close enough to get to a wireless access point. And so they might have zero physical access, which usually is required to get onto a network, or you need to have somebody on the inside, or you need to have some kind of compromise that involves actual physical access to the system. But instead of that, with wireless, with zero physical access, if you can get to a vulnerable point on the system, for example, a vulnerable router that is emitting a Wi-Fi signal, but at the same time is connected to a network with other important resources on it, or even just is the main wireless router that is being used for network access by others, then you get into a situation where if that router has default credentials, like suppose the manufacturer's standard credentials, something like admin or admin with no password or password 1 or any of those things that sometimes factory fresh routers tend to have, then if an attacker knows the model of the modem or can tell by the name of the access point, then they can get in using the default credentials if nobody changed them. And the thing about the unsecured access points is that the attackers can drive around and look for them. They don't have to actually focus on any one unless they come across something easy. So what they do is called war driving or access point mapping. And that's where they'll go from place to place and look for them. And this comes from actually driving around in a van or minivan back in the day with the big computers, or like something connected, like a device connected to a wireless network card, and actually scanning for wireless access points that way. Obviously nowadays the devices are much smaller, so there's no need for that kind of thing, but the name has stuck around, war driving. And another interesting aspect to wireless security is the location and prevention of rogue access points. And that is where, suppose an attacker has been able to get in and actually make physical contact with your network, and then they were able to add a rogue access point, whether it be a really small computer, like you can get Raspberry Pis or phones, or really any sort of small modem enabled device that you connect to a physical network or to a compromised access point, and then actually establish a different access point, which now either provides attack-infused connectivity, where anybody that connects to it actually ends up downloading malware, or it's one where now the hacker or attacker can actually come back into the network, because now that they had one physical access point where they established this rogue Wi-Fi access point and nobody knows about it, they can come back and look for it. And so the important thing, of course, is access into the system, whether it's through a rogue access point, an unsecured, legit access point, or it's something like setting up a rogue access point that looks like a legitimate access point that users then try to log into, and then capturing their username and password or their keys and using that to then impersonate them and access the system later on.